After quite some delay, Herpa has finally managed to release the Lufthansa Dreamliner aircraft model in Scale 500. And thanks to the great prices from the FMB shop, I am able to show you this model, but I have to warn you, it comes with quite a few issues. And with that, hello and welcome to a new episode of Review, where we, as mentioned, will take a closer look at a Boeing 787-9 of Lufthansa. At the top of the box we have the Lufthansa branding, and underneath that we find, well, several renditions of the aircraft model. And yes, I know people like these renditions, but this? No, come on, Herpa. You can do better. The backside of the box then gives us a single rendition of the aircraft and a little bit of additional information, and that's about it, what we can say about this box. And here is the Boeing 787-9, the Dreamliner, in the current Lufthansa livery. And this is in fact the very first Dreamliner of Lufthansa, not just as a model but also in real life. And as the aircraft in real life was quite delayed, the aircraft model also got quite delayed. But now we finally have it, and that of course calls for a closer look to see what it actually has to offer. And as always, we start our tour around the aircraft model with a look at the tail section, where we on the vertical stabilizer have the Lufthansa branding. We do also have a bit of detailing on the horizontal stabilizer, and on the fuselage we then find the full registration code of the aircraft, the German flag and the flag of the European Union. Towards the very tail of the aircraft we then also have a bit of detailing around the APU exhaust. At the front of the aircraft and across the fuselage we then have the writing of Lufthansa. Underneath that we find the aircraft type specification and the name of the aircraft. In this case the aircraft is named after the capital city of Germany, Berlin. Next to the cabin doors we then also have the typical small yellow squares, and of course we also find several static ports, the Star Alliance logo, of which Lufthansa is a founding member, and underneath the cockpit windows we also have the Lufthansa logo once more. The cockpit section itself, other than the Lufthansa logo, offers us the circular marking around the radome, the cockpit windows with the window wipers, and above the cockpit windows the emergency hatch for the cockpit. On top of the fuselage we then also find the addition of a sat dome, where I think Herpa has done a pretty decent job. The engine nacelles have been kept in white, just as most of the fuselage, but do have the silver leading edge and some safety relevant markings printed on. The physical detailing of the engines is overall, I think, quite alright. The chevron nozzles have been pulled off very nicely, and also when we look into the engines from the front we can very nicely see the engine fan blades, but more about the engines later in the video, because now we will take a closer look at the wings, starting off with the top side, where we have the different flap slats and spoilers carved out, although that could be a little bit more pronounced, but we do have the marking as to where to walk on the wing. The underside of the wings offers us more nice physical detailing. Also here, however, it could have been a little bit more pronounced. Something that is very nice on the Dreamliners of Herpa Wings are the ram air intakes, which Herpa does rather nicely. And that moves us to the landing gear, which in this case is the standard landing gear that Herpa uses for all their Dreamliners, which however isn't a bad thing, because overall I think it looks rather nicely. The only thing I'm missing here are some printed details at the front landing gear, in fact quite desperately, because it could really have benefited the model. And then last but not least, we do also have the doors to the cargo compartments printed on here at the back of the aircraft, and also here at the front of the aircraft. So there we have it, the Boeing 787-9 in the current standard livery of Lufthansa in scale 1 to 500 of Herpa Wings. And what can we say about this aircraft model? On first glimpse, sure, the aircraft model does look pretty alright, but there are some issues, and once you've seen them you cannot unsee them, and quite frankly Herpa should also have noticed them and not release the model as is. Let's start with the engines. Sure, in most cases the engines look pretty alright. The issue here is more the placement that is simply very inconsistent with Herpa. So there will be models where these engines are placed perfect, but there will also be quite a few where these engines are placed, well, just incorrectly. So be sure to check your aircraft model before you buy it, so you will be happy with it afterwards. In theory, you could also take off the engines yourself and place them correctly, but you always run the risk of damaging your aircraft model further. Which leads me to the next issues the aircraft model has, which you just can't fix yourself. Now, I have for a long time been saying that for me, the Lufthansa branding on the tail of the aircraft is too dark, but why I have to have two different blue tones on my aircraft model, I don't understand, because the Lufthansa writing at the front of the fuselage is in a lighter blue tone, than the branding at the tail. Now, the studio lighting the aircraft model is under right now certainly benefits the aircraft model because it makes the differences much smaller, but when you just have it in front of you, it will be much more noticeable. And that brings me to the final point I have about this aircraft model, which however is also my biggest point of critique, and that is that Herpa once more has used the wrong white tone. This aircraft model is not clear white. If we compare it to the Airbus A350 of Lufthansa, you will see this is clear white. The Dreamliner is not. And I'm sorry, I don't understand. Herpa has made so many Lufthansa models in the new livery. How can they suddenly use the wrong white tone? And again, I have to stress out, this aircraft model is benefiting heavily from the studio lighting. If you have the model just in front of yourself, it will be much more apparent. And all these mistakes just once again prove that Herpa does not care about their products. They do not have quality control, because then you would notice the many incorrectly placed engines, and you would also notice that you have used two different blue tones and the wrong white tone. What a shame that Herpa has butchered the first Lufthansa Dreamliner like this. So that model was definitely not worth the wait. Now, with that massive disappointment, it is time to end today's video. If you have enjoyed this episode of review, then feel free to leave a like. That would be very much appreciated. And of course, if you are new around here, why not hit subscribe? That would be absolutely awesome. With that, I'd like to say thank you very much for watching. Hope to see you soon again. I'm checking out, and bye.